You've seen the movie. Someone takes a pill, unlocks the other 90% of their brain, and within 48 hours they're learning Mandarin before lunch and outsmarting the stock market before dinner. It's a good story. There's just one problem. The premise is completely, embarrassingly, scientifically wrong. And the truth of what would actually happen if your brain's limits were removed is so much stranger that it almost doesn't matter that the movie lied to you. Almost. Here's the myth. You only use 10% of your brain. You've heard it so many times it feels like fact. The problem is that it's nonsense. Brain scan confirmed nonsense. Every region of your brain is active at some point. The only time large portions go quiet is when you're in a coma, which is not generally considered an upgrade. Where did it come from? Best guess is a misquote of William James from the early 1900s, who wrote that humans only meet a fraction of their mental potential. He meant motivationally. People don't push themselves. He wasn't talking about neuroscience. But somewhere between his original point and the 20th century retelling, you don't reach your potential became, you only use 10% of your brain, which tells you more about how myths spread than it does about brains. Here's what's actually true. Your brain is 2% of your body weight and uses 20% of your energy every day at rest. It runs on the same power as a standard light bulb, 20 watts. The question isn't whether you're using it, the question is what it's doing with all that power. Your brain isn't limited by how much of it is switched on. It's limited by how efficiently it runs and how deliberately slow evolution made it. Because it isn't trying to be as powerful as possible, it's trying to be as efficient as possible. Those are not the same thing. Efficiency means prioritizing. It means your brain is constantly making ruthless choices about what gets processed and what gets quietly dropped. The cost of that day to day is that you miss things. You misremember things. You walk into a room and forget why you went there. That's not malfunction. That's the price of a system optimized to keep you alive rather than to make you impressive at pub quizzes. A newborn has approximately 100 trillion synaptic connections, more than an adult. Between childhood and adulthood, your brain runs neural pruning, actively deleting connections you're not using. Up to 50% of them gone on purpose. Because thinking is expensive. You've actually felt this happen, just without knowing what it was. It's the reason a language you studied for 3 years at school has almost completely vanished. The reason you can no longer remember the layout of your childhood bedroom with any real precision. Your brain audited those connections, decided you weren't using them, and quietly reassigned the resources. It wasn't forgetting. It was filing a deletion request you never signed off on. Your brain also processes 11 million bits of information every second, of which you are consciously aware of approximately 50. It isn't underusing itself. It's making aggressive decisions about what deserves your attention and discarding everything else before it reaches you. Now, the fantasy. Remove the limits. Every filter drops. What actually happens? You'd see connections between unrelated things instantly. You'd sit in a meeting and know, from 17 simultaneous signals, posture, micro-expression, the half-second pause before an answer, exactly who in the room is lying and about what. You'd read a page of data and see the anomaly buried in line 43 before anyone else has finished line 1. For a few minutes, it would feel like the world slowed down and handed you a manual. Then the memory. Your brain would retain everything. Every conversation, every face, every moment of humiliation, every argument you half remember at 3 a.m., perfectly preserved. This sounds useful. It is actually a documented nightmare. Fewer than 100 people worldwide have hyperthymesia, perfect autobiographical memory. And when researchers interview them, the word that comes up most isn't gift. It's exhausting. One subject described it as a non-stop film reel she cannot pause. She can't forget the worst day of her life any more than she can forget yesterday. Perfect memory sounds like a superpower until you realize that forgetting is what allows you to move forward. Then the sensory problem. Right now, your brain filters out 99% of the sensory data your body collects. Remove that filter, and every signal arrives simultaneously, at full intensity, with no hierarchy. The hum of the lights, the specific pressure of the floor against the sole of each foot, the sound of your own breathing competing with 17 other sounds you've never consciously registered before. All of it arriving at once, all of it equally urgent, none of it with a label that says, ignore this. Non-functional within seconds. And then decision paralysis. More processing power doesn't make choices easier, it makes them harder. The more options you can see, the more paralyzing a simple decision becomes. Ordering lunch becomes a loop you never escape. But even then, your body ends the experiment. Your skull doesn't expand. Your brain at full capacity would generate heat your body cannot handle. The world's fastest supercomputers require entire rooms of cooling infrastructure. Your brain's cooling system is blood flow, and the fact that it doesn't run that hard. Remove the second part and the first part isn't enough. You wouldn't become a genius, you'd cook. So the fantasy went like this: superhuman clarity, perfect memory, total sensory awareness, limitless processing. And the reality went like this: sensory collapse, memory torture, decision paralysis, and a core temperature your skull cannot survive. You didn't get an upgrade. You got a catastrophic system failure dressed in a good trailer. So here's the turn. Everything that sounds like a limitation is actually a solution. The sensory filter isn't depriving you of experience. It's the only reason you can have a coherent experience at all. Without it, everything would be equally loud and equally urgent, and you'd have no way of knowing where to look. The forgetting that feels like failure, that's what allows you to generalize. People with perfect memory struggle to form general concepts because every instance is too vivid. They remember every individual dog so clearly that the category dog becomes harder to hold. Forgetting is what lets you see the pattern instead of just the data. And the pruning, losing half your neural connections, is what made you good at anything at all. A brain connected to everything equally has no specialization, no speed, no skill. The cuts created the pathways you actually use, the ones that let you catch a glass before it falls, or know from 3 words of a text that something is wrong. Your brain is the product of 400 million years of refinement. Every inefficiency you've ever been frustrated by is the visible surface of a solution to a problem deeper than you can currently process. Which is ironic, and also the point. You didn't come here wanting 10%, you came here wanting more. More clarity, more memory, more of whatever makes some people seem like they're operating at a different level. But the brain you have isn't a limited version of a better brain. It's a precise answer to an extraordinarily complex question. How do you build something that can survive, adapt, connect, and find meaning, all while running on 20 watts and fitting inside a skull? The most powerful thing ever built looks exactly the way it does because of every constraint placed on it.